Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Salam alaikum and good afternoon to everyone here. Welcome to the inaugural event for HBKU's Charity Week. My name is Sabika Shaban from Hamad bin Khalifa University and I am honored to be your moderator for today's event. Charity Week is a global initiative bringing thousands of volunteers together to make simple differences through a week-long schedule of fundraising and community engagement activities. They're supported by Islamic relief offices in the UK, Canada, Germany, USA, and South Africa. And in Qatar, we are supported very gratefully by Education Above All. Within Qatar, university students across the country from multiple campuses coordinate their activities to provide an amazing schedule of opportunities for our local community. Even this year, with the COVID-related dynamics, the energy has not slowed down at all. The HBKU student community has put together enlightening lectures, art workshops, chess competitions, trivia quizzes, and food and flower sales for the rest of the week. To find out more information, please look up hbkucharityweek.top, T-O-P, or follow Charity Week HBKU on Instagram, and we'll have those links in the chat. We highly encourage you to also click on the link that will be shared for your kindest donations. These will be contributed towards Education Above All, which aims to provide educational opportunities for communities stricken by poverty or crisis. Every rial donated for this cause can create a ripple effect for the future of an entire generation caught in circumstances that are not of their making. With that, we move on and express our absolute honor in welcoming our speaker for today, Dr. Assad Zaman. Dr. Zaman serves on the Monetary Policy Committee of the State Bank of Pakistan and is Director of Social Services at the online educational platform of Al-Nafi, the world's first multilingual educational platform for learning emerging technologies. Dr. Zaman holds a bachelor's degree in math from MIT and a PhD in econometrics from Stanford University. He has taught at multiple leading universities, including Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, Johns Hopkins, and Caltech in California. His textbook, Statistical Foundations of Econometric Techniques, is widely used in graduate studies. Likewise, his research in Islamic economics has proved highly influential in shaping this emerging field. Dr. Zaman, thank you kindly for accepting our invitation, and we look forward to your words of wisdom today on minimalism and Islam. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to talk on this topic. In the title slide, I have put quotes around minimalism because I have some differences which I'll discuss in the talk. So shall we just move on into the talk without further ado? Let's see now. I should be able to do this, yes. So in all places, the first place to start is the discussion of what is the purpose of my life? All other questions are subordinate to this question. And for a Muslim, it is very clear that everything we do is for the sake of Allah. And inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mati lillahi rabbil alameen. So we start from this fundamental point, and we note that all of mankind has been shown two paths. وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ. And here the Najdain is the two highways of good and evil. So what is the highway of good like? Well, Allah Ta'ala explains this in the Quran, that Allah Ta'ala created death and life to test which of you is best indeed. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. So the good life is the one in which we try to do the best deeds. And as opposed to this, what is the highway of evil? And that is also explained that, have you seen the one who has taken his nafs or his God as his own desire, and he has gone astray. So these are the two highways. One is the highway of obedience to God, and the other is the highway of obedience to the nafs. So from this basic perspective, we can ask ourselves many questions. but there are two questions that I would like to focus on. One is the individual. So, what are the best of deeds? How shall we find out what these are, and how shall we do them? And so that's how we can take the highway of good, and also how we can avoid the highway of evil. How can we avoid following our nafs and shaitan and general society, which we might call social media, which is the highway of evil. In general, the messages being propagated in the environment around us are not conducive to good. So those are on the personal and individual level. Then at the more at the broader social level, how do we build a good society? How do we get engagement, participation, uh, and other social goods? So these are the questions, and then the question of um, uh, the epistemological question: where do we find the answers? Where is the knowledge that will give us the answers? And in particular, in this era, the question uh, can takes a sharp form. Do we find the answers using our reason, or do we find the answers from the revelation? This is an old question and debate which has been continuing over the centuries. So let me start by the personal level that Sheikh Muhyiddin Ibn al-Arabi said that we should know ourselves to know God. So the first step in the path to knowledge is to learn about who I am. What is my life all about? What motivates me to action? Who are the people that I'm trying to impress, either consciously or unconsciously? This is very important because most of the time we are acting for others, and we are not usually aware of who the audience is. Who are we trying to please? So all of this is part of self-analysis, which is very important to understand our own motivations, which is needed in order to change our lives in the direction of the highway of good. So one of the great obstacles on the path to this knowledge is the Western education that we have all received. Because the Western education is based only about external realities. It does not teach us about our nafs, about our soul. And this is because we are not aware of this, but in early 20th century, the philosophy of logical positivism emerged and shaped the construction of social sciences. And one of the essential principles of logical positivism is that we should only believe in what is seen. So basically, and we should reject the unseen. So basically, it conflicts with the opening of the Quran, which says that the Quran contains the guidance for those who believe in the unseen. So it's not only that positivism denies the gods and angels and afterlife, but it also denies the heart and the soul. These are also unseen. So basically, it denies us access to knowledge of our own selves. And this is very damaging part of the Western education that we have all absorbed. And so it's necessary to counteract this to get a real understanding of our own lives and how to behave. So Islam provides us with a lot of guidance. The revelation tells us a lot of things which cannot be achieved by reason. So it tells us about the three stages of knowledge: the ilmul yaqeen and the ainul yaqeen and the haqqul yaqeen. These stages are described in different ways in different ahadith and in the Quran. So there is the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam in which he explains that Islam is about the obedience to Allah, the outward conformity to faith. Uh, the Iman is about the inward conformity to faith, the belief in the unseen, the heart, the And the ihsan, the last stage, is the worship of God as if you see Him. This is the spiritual level. So our life is a journey in which we make progress through these stages. And that is how the highway is a road, and you make progress along it. There is no stopping point, and the goal is so far that none of us can hope to achieve it in our lifetimes. So the only job is to make progress along that. So let's start with the simplest fundamental knowledge, that we all know that the life of this world is short and the pleasures of this world are few. And the life after death is eternal, everlasting. And the pleasure and the pain of that life is very large. It is said that if you gather all of the pleasures of this dunya and compare them to a moment of pleasure of the akhirah in the Jannah, uh, this dunya would be of no value. It would not compare. And similarly, if you gather up all of the pain which seems so great to us and which we work so hard to avoid, if you gather all the pain of all human beings and compare it to the pain of one person who does not make it to the Jannah, again, this pain will be very small. So if we think about it logically with our aql, and we ask, suppose I say you must spend one day in jail, and then the rest of the life you can enjoy um, as much power and pleasure as is available in this dunya. Nearly everyone would agree to this bargain. Alternatively, if we say that, suppose that I give you one day of pleasure and power, you can do anything you like and everything will be subordinate to you in this dunya. You can get the maximum amount of pleasure that it is possible to get in one day. But after that one day, you will be put in jail forever. So no one would agree to that. So this is the choice that is being offered to us by Allah Ta'ala in the two highways. The one highway is the enjoyment of this world, which is that this world is Jannah for the unbeliever. And the other is to follow the commandments of Allah and to disobey or to reject the desires of the nafs in this dunya, and then have eternal enjoyment. So logic and our heart and our soul all tell us that the first bargain is the right one, that we should do a short time of obedience and then we can enjoy forever, rather than taking immediate pleasure at the expense of large amounts of loss. But even though our head tells us this, our behavior does not conform to this, because our heart and soul are not in conformity with this logic. So in order to create conformity, in order to move along the highway of good, in order to progress from the stages of ilmul yaqeen to ainul yaqeen, we have to move from the knowledge of the mind to action. And so one of the actions that is helpful is described in the Quran as that they feed يُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. So here it is not just the act of good that is important. It's the act of doing good for the sake of the love of Allah. This is, when we do this, when we do actions for the love of Allah, then we engage our heart and soul. And this is necessary in order to achieve excellence in our deeds. And this is the purpose of life, to bring the best of deeds for Allah. Because Allah Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that He created death and life so as to test which of us is best indeed. So the object of our struggle, of our life in this world, is the purification of the heart. Our heart is filled with the love of this dunya and the love of many things which are not good for us. And so we have to cleanse our hearts of these loves and fill it with the love of Allah. And Allah Ta'ala describes this process in the ayat, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. So these are very important, that success comes from purification of the heart. It does not come from accumulation of wealth. And so Allah Ta'ala also describes the reason for our difficulties, and that is that we are engaged with the love of this dunya, and we are forgetting that the akhirah is khair, is much better, and it is for everlasting. So we are taking a temporary, short-term, small pleasure and preferring it to the eternal, everlasting, and great pleasure. And this is very illogical, but this is what we do. So how do we avoid this? In order to get this, we have to do Tazkiya, purification of the heart. And what is purification of the heart? Well, basically Allah Ta'ala lists in this ayah that all of the things that we love, the father, son, family, business, wealth, houses, all of these things are the things that we love. But the requirement for the purification is that our highest love should be for Allah and His Messenger, and the struggle for the deen. So how can we reduce the love of wealth, and how can we increase the love of Allah? So there are many pathways, but charity is our topic, so this is definitely one of them. Charity is the path to Tazkiya, and this is mentioned explicitly in the Quran. But charity itself also takes different forms according to the stage of spiritual progress. So the stages are also described in the Quran as Nafs Ammara, and Nafs Ammara is all of economic theory that we study in our courses describes the Nafs Ammara, and it makes the Nafs Ammara the best, the highest goal, because the economics textbook says that the rational behavior is of utility maximization. And what is utility maximization? It is just to maximize the pleasure that we can get, exactly equivalent to the worship of the nafs. So now, for those at this stage of spiritual progress, charity is very difficult, very painful, because it involves giving the things that we love the most. The next stage of spiritual progress involves nafsul lawwama, when we start to feel responsibility for others. Yes, I am enjoying life, but what about my friends and my neighbors and my family and other people, human beings who are not so well off, who are suffering? So this feeling of social responsibility, this is the stage of nafsul lawwama. And the last stage is the nafsul mutma'inna, which involves a complete love for God, and therefore also love for the creation of God, which is termed as the family of God in other places. And so instead of feeling responsible, we feel actually that these people are just like myself, and so we love them just like we love our own selves. And that leads to a higher degree of commitment and activity, and a higher level of engagement. So I would like to review some 4 principles for spiritual progress, and these are all from taken from our beautiful deen, which provides us with wisdom which is not found in the textbooks which teach us about external reality, because these are the real wisdom is knowing who you are and how you can make progress. Every human being is like a seed. In that seed, there is potential to achieve excellence. So if that seed becomes a tree, then it has achieved excellence. But if we remain uncooked, and we remain undeveloped as human beings, then it doesn't matter if we have the treasure of Qarun with us, we make no progress. So the first principle is to learn indifference to material wealth and luxury. Today we spend our lives chasing wealth and luxury when in fact these are not good for us. The second principle is to learn simplicity in lifestyle, to lead simple lives. And this corresponds with the minimalism that is in the title, but only roughly, as we will discuss later. The third principle is to learn generosity and compassion. This is the opposite of the economic theory, which teaches us how to learn selfishness and to take care of only yourself and not care about others. And the fourth principle, which is relevant to this, is to give dignity and equality to the poor, and in fact, to feel in our hearts the brotherhood and sisterhood of all mankind. So, briefly going through these four principles, we have to understand the deceptive nature of wealth. Wealth, and in the Quran, it is written that when Allah Ta'ala gives him wealth, man becomes puffed up with pride, and he says that my Lord has favored me. And when Allah Ta'ala tries us by taking away our wealth and putting us in difficulties, then we say that my Lord has humiliated me, Rabbi Ahanan. So basically Allah Ta'ala says in both of these that أَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ. So Allah Ta'ala puts him into a trial, a test. So wealth is a test from Allah to see, when I give my servant wealth, what does he do with it? Does he use it for his own pleasure and ignore the rights of others and ignore his social responsibilities? And similarly, poverty is also a trial from Allah to see who we turn to in the time of our need. Do we turn to Allah for help, or do we turn to other ways? And do we move away from the deen, or do we move towards the deen? So both wealth and poverty are trials. There's a hadith from Bukhari that wealth has a deceptive appearance. It appears to be very sweet and it attracts us, but it is not really that way. And wealth is a blessing for us when it is earned with contentment of the heart, but it is not when it is gotten with greed. So the state of our heart determines whether or not we can pass the test of wealth. And Allah Ta'ala also explains what success looks like and what failure looks like. And this is very important, especially in the context of charity. So this is instruction to Qarun that you have been given a lot of wealth, so you should give it to others just like you have been given. And this theme is expressed many times in the Quran. And the Sahaba, some of whom were very rich, were always engaged in the act of giving their wealth to others. This Qarun, when he was given this advice, he said that no, I have gotten this wealth because of my own special knowledge and skills, and I don't owe anything to anybody else. So this is the demonstration of the failure in the trial by wealth, when you feel that this is all mine, it belongs to me, and I don't need to share it with anybody else. So the second lesson in spiritual progress is simplicity in lifestyle, which is what corresponds to minimalism. So Allah Ta'ala teaches us that we should have moderation. We should spend our money. We should not be misers, but we should not waste it. So in these ayat, Allah Ta'ala tells us that we can put on our zina, we can put on our beautiful clothes for services, for formal occasions, and we can eat and drink and enjoy life, but we cannot do excesses. We cannot do waste, and we cannot spend to impress others, and many other harmful ways of consumption. So, moderation is different from monasticism and austerity. It is that we use things which are halal, and we enjoy ourselves in ways which are halal, and we don't punish ourselves. We don't refrain from, we don't say that honey is very sweet and I like it, so I won't have it to punish myself and to train my nafs. This is not the way of Islam. So we are required to lead simple lifestyles, but this is not minimalism. Minimalism comes from Western background, and it comes from rejecting, because extreme they have gone to extreme in consumer lifestyles, and they have made the object of life earning of wealth and earning of enjoyment and pleasure. So some people who have some spirituality realize and recognize that this is harmful, so they go to the other extreme. They say that, okay, let's cut everything out. So this, neither extreme is good, and Allah Ta'ala has given us the right balance. And in order to achieve this so-called minimalism, it cannot be done just by one shot, that, okay, I'm not going to live in big houses anymore. It is a very complex and multidimensional and rich process. So it requires spiritual progress. It requires understanding the nature of wealth and luxury. It involves seeing through the mataul ghurur that this life presents us. So some aspects of this life are an illusion, other aspects are real, and we have to learn the difference, and we have to learn the wisdom of the Quran in order to understand how to achieve this so-called minimalism, and what is really moderation or simplicity according to the Islamic views. The third path is to learn generosity and compassion. Again, this is in conflict with economic teachings and with the teachings that are currently dominant, that, this life is all about building your own career and acquiring your own wealth and building your own house and getting your own car. And all of this is the message of Hollywood, which unfortunately has been very deeply absorbed by the Muslim youth. And this is extremely harmful for us, both in this dunya and also in the akhirah. So the opposite message is the Quran, that instead of trying to get all the things that we like, we should give away the things that we love the most. So, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. So we sacrifice our worldly love for the sake of the love of Allah. And this is the path to spiritual progress. And so Allah Ta'ala encourages, Allah Ta'ala knows that this is difficult for the nafs. So in the Quran, there are so many verses which encourage us to give a good loan to Allah, and Allah Ta'ala will multiply it many times and give it back to you. So the nafs should realize that this is only a temporary sacrifice, and I will get back more, much more. So this is, instead of giving and feeling bad that, oh, my wealth has become reduced by my giving, we should feel glad that my wealth has been blessed by Allah and it will increase manyfold. Learning generosity involves learning to be kind to all. And Allah Ta'ala explains the people to whom we should be kind, and list them in sequence, that they are parents and relatives and the orphans and the needy and the nearby neighbors and the farther neighbors and our companions and travelers and our servants and associates and business partners. So Allah Ta'ala tells us that we are to be good, and we are to do good to all the human beings. And this is generosity. And Allah Ta'ala explains that He loves those people who are generous, and He does not like those who are stingy, who withholds their wealth and they keep it for themselves and they avoid spending on others. And the final point relevant to the charity is that we must give respect and dignity to the poor. We should not think of them as inferior in any way. And so Allah Ta'ala teaches us that we are all brothers and sisters and we are all equal in the eyes of Allah except by taqwa. And so the person whose heart is closest to Allah, he is the one who is most honored. But this is something we cannot tell from the outside. So from our own perspective, we are all brothers and sisters and we are all equal. And Allah Ta'ala teaches us the adab, the etiquette of how to give to the poor. And so, and also it teaches the poor that you should act with dignity. Do not go and beg from others. You should, so they act like they are self-sufficient, and the rich people cannot actually discover who is poor because they act like they don't have any needs. So it is up to us, those who have been given wealth, to discover those who are in need and to provide for them in ways that does not offend their dignity. In fact, the Quran says that it is better for you not to give than to insult people while giving them. So there are many etiquette dealing with this, that we are, those people who have been given wealth are told that our wealth is given to us for the sake of the poor among us, and that they are entitled to a share. And those who have excess wealth more than their needs should take care. They have the responsibility to take care of those who don't have enough for their needs. So Imam al-Ghazali teaches us that the rich person should not feel superior, should not feel pride while giving. Instead, they should feel grateful that they have been given the opportunity to perform an act of worship. And this leads to the purification of the heart. And that is, so it is a blessing for us to have the poor among us. So now I will try to wrap this up by some more important messages and context. And so let us remember that 14 centuries ago, the ignorant and backwards Bedouin in the desert received this message and they became the leaders of the world. So what is it? What is the power of this message that can lead people to world leadership? Unfortunately, today the Muslims have forgotten this message because the prophecy was that Islam came as a stranger and it will become a stranger. Today, Muslims are not realizing this, but the teachings of Islam have the same power. Today, the Muslims again are backward and ignorant and seem to be in the darkness. And the teaching of Islam have exactly the same power today to lift us from this ignorance and to make us the leaders of the world. But today, instead of looking to the Quran and Allah for guidance, we are looking to the West for guidance. Instead of studying the simplicity and the message of the life of our Prophet Muhammad, we are studying the concept of minimalism as it comes from rich stockbrokers in the West who found that their lifestyle was not good for them, so they changed to a simple lifestyle. So even the best of the messages, instead of receiving from the sources which have the final message of Allah, we are looking at corrupted and polluted sources for our guidance. So how did this happen? How did these Muslims who have been given the greatest message, the final message, how did they come to this position where we are ignorant and backwards? This is also explained in the Quran. And Allah Ta'ala says that we should hold firmly together and we should not become divided. And that the greatest favor of Allah is that He made us brothers and He guided us out of the darkness into the light. So the rules of charity that we have been discussing are really rules of family behavior. Once we understand that we are all one single family, then we understand that if somebody doesn't have, then it is my job to make sure that he has enough to eat. All the children of the world are my children. If they are not educated, then it's my responsibility to educate them. If they don't have food, it is my responsibility. Just like I understand that my child is my responsibility, I should understand that all of the creation of God, and this doesn't include human beings, it also includes the animals, the birds, and the deer in the forest. They are all part of the creation of the God, and they are all part of my family. And it is our job to be kind to the family of Allah. So the unity of our hearts is the key to development, progress, power, and leadership. And it was this that was achieved by the Muslims, and this is what gave them the worldly leadership that we have lost. And today, this comes about from the characteristic of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was rahmatul lil alameen. That it is painful to him that you suffer. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his heart, he felt the pain of all of human beings. And this is the characteristic of rahmah that we need to acquire to fill our hearts with the love of the creation of God for the sake of the love of Allah. And our failure today comes from the divide and rule strategy that has been used against us so effectively. And we have quarreled with each other, and brother is fighting brother, and the Muslim world, Islamic world, is full of battles and quarrels and wars, and with Muslims killing fellow Muslims. And Allah Ta'ala warns us that if you do this, if you divide among yourselves, then تَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. And so our power will depart from us. And so we need to remain among the sabirin in this trial from Allah. So to end this talk, I would like to make dua that Allah Ta'ala should cleanse our hearts of the love of this dunya and fill it with the love of Allah Ta'ala himself and his Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and for the love of the struggle to establish the deen. And may Allah Ta'ala make us among those whose worship and sacrifice and struggles and our living and dying are all for the sake of Allah Rabbul Alameen. And may Allah Ta'ala unite us, our hearts, and fill it with the mercy for all mankind, which was demonstrated by the perfect model for our behavior, which was our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was rahmatul lil alameen, and whose kindness was like the rain, as comes in the hadith. So I think I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zaman, for that insightful talk and really outlining basic principles that we need to bring into our lives and practice. So I highly encourage our audience to post your questions in the chat or comments related to these important messages. But in the meantime, while they collect their thoughts, I'll go ahead and start off. And so all of us at this point who are on this line today, and yourself, myself, we all live in Islamic countries that depend on Western economic systems. So just picking on the fact that you're an economics expert and a practicing Muslim, it seems that Islam-conscious consumerism, being very conscious of these Islamic values and being a person in society, is it a complete antithesis to economic development, for instance, because you're not going to have the same injections to the economy, people don't spend. So are these just contradictory at the surface? Can they ever coexist? Can we look at a successful blooming society while also following such kind of thinking when it comes to consumerism?
That's a very good question. The first thing that you have to do is to understand what is success. And basically, today, Hollywood has defined for us success as being the American lifestyle. Now, the American lifestyle requires for each person, on the average, 8.2 hectares of land to sustain it. But there are only about 3 hectares of land available per person on the planet. So it is impossible for everyone to achieve the wealth and the wasteful lifestyle that we have all learned to love, just because it has been painted as being very attractive to us. And so basically, there is a hadith that in the end of the time, Dajjal will come and he will have heaven in his one hand and his hell will be in the other hand. And so, but what he paints as heaven will actually be hell, and what he paints as hell will actually be heaven. So this is the way of in the consumer society. It looks like it's very attractive because you have so many things, but what you don't have is the love in the hearts. If you look at the divorce rate, the suicide rate, alcoholism, depression, you find that you can have all the things, but if you don't have close family ties, you can't rely on your wife to be with you for the rest of your life. Your children cannot be, your relationship with your children is only temporary until they grow up. So the attraction of this life is the external, the appearances, but the internal reality is very bitter. And conversely, if you lead a very simple lifestyle, you don't have any apparent wealth, but you have love in your hearts and you have strong family ties, then with very little you can be very happy. So it's the question of redefining success and understanding the delusion of mata'ul ghurur that this life offers.
Well
So
noted.
yes, consumerism is based on an illusion that goods can bring us happiness, but this is not true.
Well said. We do have some questions pouring in. So I'll start off with this question. What is the importance of intention in doing charity and feeding the poor?
Of course, this is the most important thing, as has been stated in many innamal a'mal bin niyat. And so the first 3 people to be tried in the Yawm al-Qiyamah, one will say that I gave everything. I spent a lot of wealth for the sake of the poor. And he will be told that, no, you did this to become, so that you will be called generous, and you were called, and there's nothing for you in the akhirah. So the intention is very important. For the sake of the love of Allah, we must feed the poor, not for our own fame or popularity, but for the sake of the love of Allah.
We have another comment saying, thank you for the talk. You mentioned that if we aim to achieve wealth, we should keep our hearts clean and not do it out of greed. How do we make sure that we don't have greed when we strive for wealth and don't fall into that trap, since it can be hard to remove the feeling of greed completely?
Yes, absolutely. This is the process of Tazkiya. It's a difficult process in which the mashayikh spend lifetimes. And so there are simple steps. At each stage, different types of tarbiyah is required. So when you are in the initial stages of this journey, then basically, actually, one of the key things is to take small steps. Ad-dinu matinun. Don't, if somebody takes a step which is too big, he gives away his house and becomes poor, for example, then he will not be able to withstand the trial. There's a famous incident in the Battle of, I think it was Hunain, but I'm not sure, that Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu brought all of his material and gave everything for the sake of Allah to the Prophet, and it was accepted. But another Sahabi brought something And he said, this is all that I have and I'm giving it. So the Prophet ﷺ did not accept that, because his love of wealth was demonstrated by his statement that this is all I have. And so he was not able to give that much and feel happy. I mean, it was not consistent with the stage of spiritual progress at that time. So it means that you take small steps towards Allah, and as you take one step, Allah Ta'ala will take 10 steps towards you. So He will make the further journey easier. So if you, every nafs knows itself. So if you know that what you can do comfortably for Allah, and once you do that, then the more difficult steps will become easier as you proceed.
And that's an incredibly motivating message, to even just take one tiny step. But you mentioned spiritual progress. So we do have a question. Do you believe spiritual progress is possible in the presence of love with material wealth?
Well, this is what the game is all about. This is the battle that we have to fight. And yes, you can start from the worst kind of nafs ammar. Every human being has been given the possibility of making spiritual progress. And so definitely, yes, it's a question of a battle against the nafs. And you make, when the nafs is very strong, as it is in these days, then you make small sacrifices. You do little things that you can. I remember that there was a time when I was deeply addicted to TV. I would watch it all the time. That was in my youth. And I couldn't bear the thought of giving it up, even though I realized that it is causing me harm. So I read this, I think it was advice from Al-Ghazali, that you just say, okay, I'll stop it for a little while and then I will watch it again. So let me abstain from this until I reach the next well. So you abstain for 1 hour, and then you abstain for 2 hours, and you gradually strengthen your ability to resist the temptation of the nafs. And then you can get rid of it eventually.
Very practical. So this is maybe a similar question, but it has its own importance. What is your view on money equating happiness? Because money can also be a source of creating happiness, for example, through helping others.
Very good. Does money buy happiness? This is a question that has been debated through the centuries. And basically, now there is a lot of actual social scientific research on it. And it shows that human happiness is very strongly tied to our character and our social relationships. So the people who are chasing after wealth, they do not become happy because they're always looking at what they lack. And whenever you have, even if you have $1 million, in fact, there was a survey of millionaires asking them, do you have enough money? And most of them, the majority said, no, we don't have enough money for our needs. So no matter how much money you have, you can always have more. And as long as you're seeking wealth, you will never have enough. And as you study contentment, and that is tawakkul and sabr, then however little you have, it will be enough for you. So money does not buy happiness. Character, our ability to be content with what we have, thankfulness, this is the key to success, to be grateful to Allah. If we are grateful for the favors that Allah Ta'ala has given us, our health, our prosperity, whatever we have in the morning when we wake up healthy, we have the greatest gift that Allah Ta'ala has given to any of mankind. So if we feel this gratitude, then Allah Ta'ala will multiply His favors and He will make us rich. And true richness is contentment of the heart.
Absolutely. And speaking of money and using it wisely, what is the best way to purify our intentions when giving charity or doing good in general? What is the mindset we should have?
Yeah, the purification of intentions is a very important topic, and it has a lot of, and there are books and books upon it. But some simple things is to just reflect on your own heart and ask yourself, who am I doing this for? Who am I trying to please with this? Am I trying to make the other person feel grateful? Am I seeking his thanks? Am I seeking a reward? Or am I trying to please my Lord, Allah? So if you ask your heart will give you the answer. And then you can try to correct it if you have the wrong intention.
Well, we have another message. Thank you for your time. Is a person supposed to be living a simple life when they have the means to live an expensive life?
Yes, I think that simplicity in lifestyles is to be preferred. If you have the means, then you should reflect on all of the people who are living extremely poor lives, and instead of trying to increase your standard of living, which is actually the teaching that we acquire, that yes, we should always be trying to increase our standard of living. Actually, this is opposite is true. We should try to increase the standard of living of the people who don't have anything, rather than trying to increase our own standard of living. And this is the requirement of understanding that we are all one family. We are all brothers and sisters. So how can I live a good life when my brothers and sisters are not having enough food to eat? This is the feeling that should be in our hearts.
And I apologize, the questions are just pouring in, and we do have about 2-3 minutes left on the clock. So I'll just keep going if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
To attain spiritual progress, is it a must to be in company of people who are ahead of us in spiritual progress?
Yes, this is highly recommended. That yes, one of the best ways to achieve spiritual progress is to go to the leaders, the ones who have love of Allah in their hearts. That's the easiest and best way to do that. Yes.
Well, I suppose I will ask one last question, because we've just got another minute to go. How do you think, because we are living in an age of drastic wastefulness, even though we're more informed and arguably more academically smarter than ever before. How do you think our education system can be developed or enhanced to impact the growing generation right now? Because education, in a sense, affects our first 2 decades of life.
Yes, this is a very important question that requires another 1 hour of talk, and I have given this talk in other occasions. But basically, the real problem is that we have all, because of Western hegemony, we have all become part of our education is Western education system, and this only teaches us individualism, selfishness, pursuit of your own career, wealth, and doesn't teach us social responsibility, doesn't teach us love for others. This is not part of any of the lessons. You go through the whole curriculum and you will not find a single word on how we should care for the others and how we should anyway. So this is the problem, that we are all deeply impressed by the West because of their conquest and colonization of the globe. And therefore, whatever message they give, we accept uncritically, even if it is in conflict with the Quran. And this is one of the main reasons for our problems today. And purification of this heart is difficult because of this educational system. And we need to remedy that. But it is not easy to do. But it is essential, important.
Absolutely. It's a mountain of an issue. But I'll ask just that one last closing question before we let you go from our audience. She says, I wanted to know if it was bad that our intention is to make ourselves happy by giving to others.
Yes, well, see, if you rely on the promise of Allah that He will give you happiness if you give to others, and there is a promise like that, that if you take care of the needs of others, I will take care of your needs. And there is a promise of God. So if we have tawakkul and faith in Allah that Allah Ta'ala will make us happy, there's nothing wrong. It's actually very good. This is part of faith.
Thank you for that. And I'm glad we ended on a positive note. And with that, we really, really thank you for your time and your presentation and the messages you relate to us today. Thank you for supporting Charity Week. And thank you to everyone else for joining us on the line. This session is recorded, so will be available to others very, very soon. So thank you so much.
Jazakallah.
Have a lovely day.
You too.